to Chapter 8, Lesson 2. We're going to have Eliza start us off with our trivia question.
What is the sweatiest part of your body?
We'll get the answer at the end. Okay, to begin Chapter 8, Lesson 2, we're going to start out with a couple of vocabulary terms, sequence and term. A sequence is numbers in an order. A term is a number in a sequence. So let's take a look at a sequence right now. Here's our sequence. And we're going to write the next 3 terms in that sequence. Well, we want to figure out how do we go from 13 to 26. How do we skip from 13 to 26? We know we're getting higher, so maybe we'll be adding. So 13, and I know that 13 plus 13 equals 26. But this has to work for every term in the sequence. So let's test the next step. To get from 26 to 52, does 13 work? No, it's only 39. So adding 13 is not going to be our function rule for how to get from one term to the next. Let's try multiplying. I know that 13 times 2 will get me 26. Let's see if it works for this term as well. So if we take 26 times 2, yes, it works. So to get from one term to the next, we're going to be multiplying by 2. So now we're going to start with 104 and multiply by 2. I know that 4 times 2 is 8. 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 1 is 2. So that's the next term in the sequence. Let's see if you can figure out these answers before I get there. And you can pause the video and try it on your own. I know that 8 times 2 is 16, and 2 times 2 is 4, so that's the next term. I know that 16 times 2 is 32, and 4 times 2 is 8. So to describe the relationship between the terms in the sequence, we would say, not add, multiply by 2. And then the next 3 terms are 208, 416, and 832. Make sure to put commas in between the terms in the sequence. Here's our next problem. Hi, Clyde. Okay, that is a lot of words. John, can you zoom in a little bit so that way the students can read that? But we're going to break it down into pieces. So we're going to use, basically, we're going to describe how we get from the top row, the position, to the bottom row, the value of the term. We're going to figure out what goes in that box, and then we're going to figure out the 15th term in the sequence. Well, to get from 1 to 2, I know that we could add 1. But that rule has to work for every position and every value of the term. So to get from 2 to 4, does adding 1 work? No, it doesn't. So we know that adding 1 is not how we get from the top row to the bottom row. Well, let's try multiplying. If we multiply by 2, it works for that position and that term. Let's see if it works for this position and that term. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. So we're going to be multiplying by 2 at every position to the term. So we would say, if we're going to write it in words, this is what we would say. Multiply the position by 2. Now we're going to write it in symbols. We could write it like that. Multiply by 2. But we don't use x for multiply anymore. And since n means any number, we could write n times 2. But instead, how do we write n times 2? See if you can figure that out. Go ahead and pause. Well, here's how we write it. We write the number, the coefficient in the front, and the variable in the back. So that means n times 2. Now we have to figure out the 15th term. Okay, so here's what we do for the 15th term. We're going to take 15. What are we going to do with it? We're going to multiply it times 2. And we know that that equals 30. So we'll box in that answer. Here's our next problem. This is something that I hope you never have to deal with. It's related to overdue books at the library. I've had to pay more than my share of fees and fines because I usually forget to return my books on time. Okay, so this table shows if your book is overdue 1 week, you owe $3. If your book is overdue 2 weeks, you owe $5. We want to know what's a function rule to find the fee for a book that is X weeks overdue, which means any number of weeks. Well, this time we want to know how to get from weeks overdue to the fee amount. How do we go from this side to that side? Well, to get from 1 to 3, we know, obviously, that plus 2 works. We have to make sure, though, it works for every single step in our chart. So to get from 2 to 5, does plus 2 work? It doesn't, because that would only be 4. So adding 2 is not going to work. We could multiply. Multiply by 3 to get from 1 to 3. Let's try it there. That doesn't work either. So we know that since our numbers are getting higher and adding and subtracting by themselves don't work, we're going to need to use both adding and subtracting. So now we're just going to play with it and try to figure it out. Well, to get from 1 to 3, 1 times what plus what would give me 3? Well, let's try 1 times 1 plus 2. 1 times 1 is 1, plus 2 is 3. That works. So let's try it down here for 2. Let's say we take 2 times 1 plus 2. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 2 is only 4. That doesn't work. So we have to try something else. Let's say we take 1 times 2 plus 1. 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Let's see if that works down here. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. I think we're onto something here. Let's see if it works for 3 to get to 7. If we start with 3, we're going to take it times 2 and add 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. It does work. Now, what if we had x as our number? Because that means that any of those values of weeks overdue is going to be x. So I'm going to take x times 2, x times 2 plus 1. That's what I did to all of the numbers for my value of x. But we know now we don't use an x for multiply, do we? So how else can I write x times 2? This means x times 2, and then we add the 1 at the end. So there is our function rule to find the fee for overdue books. We have one more problem. And I'll let you start to read that while I get our board ready. Okay, we have another sequence of numbers, and we have these terms in the sequence. We want to find out, oops, that's the wrong problem. Okay, thank you. Eliza, what's the answer to our trivia question? The sweatiest part of your body?
Is your palms, actually, not your armpits.
Okay, here's the question that I wanted to show you. We want to know, what is that missing sequence? We want to know what number goes in here. Well, first, we want to know, how do we get from 16 to 20 and a half? We know we're probably going to be adding. What are we adding? We could multiply, but that's going to be kind of a weird fraction or decimal. Well, to get from 16 to 20, we add 4. And then to get to 20 and a half, we add 4 and a half. Well, now we have to add 4 and a half to 7, because we want to make sure that we know what number fits in there. So 7 plus 4 is 11. Adding another half is 11 and a half. Well, now we have to make sure that to get from that to that, adding 4 and a half really does work. So if we have 11 and a half plus 4 and a half, 11 plus 4 is 15. And 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1, and adding 15 plus 1 is 16. So it does work. So our term that fits in there is 11 and a half. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.